Hungary's 13 officially recognized minorities count around 6.5% of the population. Since minorities live largely dispersed across the country, non-territorial autonomy has been introduced as a way to accommodate their needs. A constitutional amendment in 1990 declared that minorities had the right to establish their self-governments, while the 1993 Minority Act adopted a variant of cultural autonomy. Hungary's internal and external minority policies have been the subject of a number of debates. Many argue that the focus has always been on the kin-state policy, and that domestic affairs have been principally driven by a desire to improve the situation of the more numerous Hungarian minorities living abroad. Other open issues include the corollaries of the communist legacy, the role of internal minorities, the problem of representation amidst a growing number of minority organizations, and, not least, the desire to compensate the previously non-recognized and discriminated Roma community. The Hungarian model of minority self-governments is organized on three levels: local, regional, and national. Representatives are elected directly by registered minority voters every 5 years. Minority members can apply for registration and may vote based on self-identification, while minority organizations must meet legal requirements to be able to nominate their candidates. This personal principle is complemented by territorial elements. Namely, local elections can be held if there are at least 25 minority members in the municipality. Also, a regular local council can transform itself into a local minority self-government if the majority of its representatives won their seats as minority candidates, and if the majority of voters in the municipality are registered as voters of the respective minority. The number of local bodies has increased over the years. While there were 817 in 1995, this number rose to 2,188 in the elections of 2019. On the other hand, regional minority self-governments can be established in units where at least 10 local elections have been called. Finally, at the national level, each minority can elect only one self-government, and its establishment is not dependent on local or regional elections. Minority self-governments have decision-making, co-decision-making, and consultative powers, as well as the right of consent on certain minority-related issues. They are empowered to establish, take over, and administer educational and cultural institutions. There are now hundreds of institutions, kindergartens, primary and secondary schools, halls of residence, museums, archives, libraries, theaters, radio stations, publishing houses, and research institutes that are run by minorities. In this way, minority self-governments have become the main actors in the implementation of linguistic, cultural, and educational rights of the minorities. The Hungarian case illustrates that relying on individual self-identification alone can often result in the inflation of group membership. This phenomenon, commonly known as ethno-business, means that the system may incorporate even those who are perceived or even declared as not belonging to a given group. Another much debated issue is whether minority self-governments could be considered as autonomous and effective structures that enable the minorities to preserve their identity and manage their own affairs. Critics suggest that these bodies are merely symbolic, window-dressing institutions whose creation was driven mainly by the desire of the state to comply with international standards and to set an example, having in mind the situation of Hungarian minorities living in the neighboring countries. Invested with limited competencies and resources, the minority self-governments can hardly empower the communities, while the system enables the state to influence and exert control over minority issues. This is particularly relevant for the Roma, the country's largest ethnic community. It is questionable whether cultural autonomy corresponds with the needs of this predominantly Hungarian-speaking, yet socially and economically marginalized group. Some argue that Roma self-governments are a rather tokenistic form of representation, which reinforces the divisions between the Roma and non-Roma population, reproduces the dependence of the Roma communities, and represses civic activism. To learn more about minority protection and cultural diversity management, visit our website at entan.org.